everyone. Welcome to Meeting Halfway Kitchen, the ultimate judgment-free zone. My name is Amanda Grace Benitez, and this is Abby Road, and I'll be your host for the next hour, and I am so excited. First off, I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up here and making the big changes to your diet and helping the planet and all beings on it. And secondly, I want to thank you so much for all the contributions and all of the donations, because every contribution helps us continue to fight against the inhumane treatment of all animals. Lastly, I couldn't thank Joe, Julie, and the amazing team at World Animal Protection US enough for coordinating this entire extravaganza and all of the selfless things that they do on a daily basis to help all of our animal friends. Today we have Carleigh Bodrug, who's the founder of Plant U, a whole food plant-based online community where she offers digital meal planning. Carleigh has over 500,000 combined social media followers, where she shares recipes and tips on plant-based food and nutrition. Carleigh holds a BA in journalism and media studies through Western University and Fanshawe College. She is a registered holistic health coach and a graduate of the plant-based certificate program by Nutrition Studies and Cornell University. Hey, Carleigh.
Hey everybody, I'm so happy to be here and be cooking this boneless bone broth with you all. It's gonna be so much fun, and I promise it's gonna taste delicious too.
I'm so excited to have you. So excited. And then next we have Joe Loria. Joe oversees World Animal Protection's meat reduction campaign as part of our larger food system efforts. He has nearly a decade of experience in digital marketing, advocacy, and public relations, and is a social justice activist that is committed to changing the world for animals. Joe, at World Animal Protection, he works closely with companies such as Just Salads, Starbucks, and Dannon to implement more plant-based options into the consumer's diet. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Amanda Grace, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited that you're going to be cooking with us today.
I'm so stoked. Thank you so much for hosting. And Carleigh, thank you so much for this recipe. I'm so excited to get cooking. It's getting really cold here in Philly, and this boneless bone broth is going to be perfect as the temperatures drop over the weekend. So super stoked about that. And thank you so much on behalf of World Animal Protection to all of you at home for joining us today and supporting our work. For those of you unfamiliar with World Animal Protection, we've been around for more than 55 years, and we're an international animal welfare organization. We have consultative status at the United Nations, the European Union, and OIE. And we have 14 different country offices. We're active in more than 50 different countries and are grateful to have more than 7 million supporters around the world. Our two campaign areas focus on wildlife and food systems. And first, our wildlife work aims to end the exploitation of wild animals in the entertainment industry, pet trade, traditional medicine, and ending the illegal wildlife trade. And then, of course, while we're here today, our food system work. And we're working to transform the food system to be more sustainable, equitable, and just, and of course, kinder to animals. And one of the best ways to do that is to reduce your consumption of factory farm meat and eat more delicious plant-based recipes like the one we're going to do today. So thank you all so much for joining us, and let's get to it. I'm stoked.
Yes, and Joe, are you doing a slightly different variation today, or are you sticking primarily to the recipe?
I tried my best to get all the ingredients, but I do have some different variations that I'm going to do. And Carleigh, we're just going to roll with it, and hopefully we'll make it through. And it's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be delicious. So for those of you who weren't, yeah. So for anyone at home who was unable to get all the ingredients, we'll make it work, and it's going to be great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the best parts about this recipe, and one of the reasons we chose it. You can literally use any vegetable you have in your fridge to go into this broth, any food scrap, and it will turn out delicious. So no worries at home if you're thinking, oops, I forgot this ingredient. It's not going to matter. I can always give substitutions if you want to pop a question in the question box as well.
Yes, using the Q&A feature down below. Thank you so much. And for me, guys, my name again is Amanda Grace Benitez. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I'm an actress. I've been plant-based since birth and became a World Animal Protection US ambassador in 2020 to help educate and spread awareness on both the economical and ethical benefits on reducing meat consumption and implementing more plant-based items into one's diet. You guys can catch me in my latest film, The Bucket List, a Netflix original. sorry, excuse my language, and as well as this upcoming season of Cartoon Network's Craig of the Creek. I'll also be launching my clothing line Prayer, spelled Praer, which is a fully vegan, organic, and sustainable line drawing from my Panamanian roots. Now, without further ado, let's get started making some tasty boneless bone broth. And please make sure to write down all questions and comments that you may have, because right after the class, we're going to be doing the Q&A using, again, the Q&A feature down below. And again, if you didn't receive the recipe list, it's actually posted right down below as well. Okay, Carleigh, take it from here.
Hey everybody, I am beyond excited to be cooking with you today. And the best part about this recipe is not only can you use just about any vegetable scrap you have lying around in your fridge, it's also probably the easiest recipe ever to make. And it's so versatile. So I always have some of this boneless bone broth in my fridge to saute vegetables with, make soups with, and it's just an amazing nutrient dense broth to have around. So I want to talk first a bit about why we chose this recipe. And you've probably heard in the health sphere that bone broth is amazing for you. And the truth of it is, what's amazing for you about bone broth is probably all the nutrients and minerals from the vegetables used to cook that bone broth in. And broth in general is a really great way to warm your system up. If you're somewhere like me in Canada, it's freezing right now. If you have a cold, it can help with mucus. And also, it's an amazing way to get nutrients in that's really low calorie. So today we've selected a whole bunch of different vegetables that really amp up the nutrient density of this broth. So first we've got kale, which is an amazing source of vitamin K. We've got carrots, which beta carotene for your skin, your eye health. We've got onions. So you can see that I've got one yellow onion here, which isn't in the recipe, but my purple onion was half gone and the skin's gone. And you might be wondering why we haven't taken the skins off in this recipe. And the reason is, if you think about vegetables growing, why they have a shell is to protect themselves from getting ruined in the ground. And it's pretty amazing because there's so many nutrients in these skins. So we're going to keep them in the broth. We're going to wash them off and keep them in the broth. Obviously, you wouldn't normally eat the skin of an onion, but this is a really great opportunity to use it without contributing to food waste. We've got ginger, which is incredible for you. Beets, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a fan of eating beets on their own. So this is a great way to get some beets in your diet without having to really have a beet flavor. It gives this broth such a beautiful kind of red purple color that I love. Garlic, amazing when you're sick. One of my favorite doctors, the Gut Health MD on Instagram, says he eats a raw piece of garlic if he's getting sick, and it can really help out with that. And finally, we've got spices like turmeric and bay leaves. So,
Carleigh,
like I said,
I have a question for you, actually, an anonymous one.
Awesome.
On that turmeric note. Is there a reason to use turmeric, or is that just a taste choice?
No, actually, there's a really big reason to use turmeric. If you can, you should be eating turmeric every day, unless you have a health issue that says otherwise. It is a very powerful spice, and all research on turmeric, the studies that have been published, point to it being very good for brain health and perhaps even helping with Alzheimer's. So it is incredible for inflammation, and to include in your diet just a small amount each day. A small amount goes a long way. I have a great turmeric latte recipe on my blog if you're ever interested, but this is such a great way to add it to the broth and sip on daily. And again, it does give a nice kind of like a curry note to the broth. So that would be the reason that we've included turmeric today.
Thank you.
And just a further question, Carleigh. Turmeric, to get those benefits, I've heard you need black pepper. Is that true?
Yes.
You need some cracked black pepper? Okay.
Yeah, it activates one of the phytochemicals in the turmeric, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but I think it's called curcumin or curcumin, and that's the very powerful thing that helps with memory and decreasing inflammation. So if you add just a touch of black pepper, that's all you need. That's why you'll often see in golden milk or turmeric lattes, they'll add black pepper to the mixture.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it activates that compound within turmeric, so it's pretty cool. So to start, All we're gonna do is add all of these components, except for the spices. Don't add the spices to a colander because we're gonna rinse them off. So ideally, in an ideal world, we'd all have organic vegetables today. I know that's not always possible. If you're ever making the broth in the future, this is maybe a splurge. You would go organic because you are using the skins. And the other thing I want to note is oftentimes I make this about every 3 months. I will just save up scraps of the vegetables and meals I'm making throughout the week. So I save it in a reusable Ziploc bag and just store it in the fridge for whenever I'm making broth. And it's a really great way to just use up those food scraps and cut down on your food waste, which is what this is all about. Okay, so I'm gonna take you over to my sink and we'll wash these up.
Yay.
Awesome.
One moment.
I love it.
Okay, one second. I gotta alter the view here.
Carleigh, there's often this myth that those who eat plant-based foods don't get enough B12 and need to take a supplement or whatnot. But I've been reading these health studies that show that, you know, especially when you eat like root veggies that come from the ground and are in dirt, especially organic, you actually obtain B12 through that, right? Through the dirt that's in there.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. The reason we don't get B12 as vegans and plant-based people today is not so much because we're vegan, but it's because of today's sanitary standards. Everything is washed. B12 is in soil. So you're completely right that you might be getting trace amounts of B12 from these root vegetables that are grown in the soil. You're always best to take a supplement because the side effects of B12 deficiency are not something any of us want. So I wouldn't say to like up your root vegetables in order to get your B12, but it certainly makes sense that it would be a source. But all the time I get people say to me, oh, you shouldn't naturally be vegan because of the B12, like you don't get it in your diet. And it's actually meat eaters as well who are now suffering B12 deficiency. It's an issue all around. But yeah, a good supplement to take if you are starting on your vegetarian, vegan, or plant-based journey.
Or just eating more plant-based foods.
Exactly.
And Carleigh, you talked a little bit about gut health. Can you tell some of the viewers who are maybe newer to the term why it's so like important to maintain a healthy gut and maybe some healthy gut foods or activities that one can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So your gut, think of it like a colony. Like it has thousands of strains of bacteria in your gut. And bacteria, I'm not talking bad bacteria, good, bad bacteria. All of this makes up your gut microbiome, which influences your health in so many ways, your brain health, your mental health, your digestive health. So we really want to be optimizing our gut health with many strains of plant bacteria. So one of the keys to a healthy diet and a healthy gut is eating a variety of plants. This is something, if you are not following him, the Gut Health MD is a wealth of knowledge on this topic. And he really talks about how the key to health is eating a diversity of plants in our diet. And he's also analyzes studies where they look at meat eaters compared to somebody who's eating a plant-based diet. And almost always the person who has a plant-based diet has a healthier gut microbiome. So the number one thing you can do is definitely optimize your diet by eating more plants. And one easy way to do it is getting a variety of plants in your diet is by sipping on this boneless bone broth during the day. So this gets like 12, I think we probably have 12 plants in this. Spices are included in plants, whole grains are plants, legumes are plants. All of these things are plants and all add up to this kind of colony that is your gut. I hope that makes sense.
No, it did. Thank you. That was a great explanation.
So I'm just gonna rinse the vegetables. I've got a clean sponge here. You can use whatever, you can use your hands. And I've got filtered water through my tap here. And you really wanna focus on those skins, and the beet mostly are the ones that are the dirtiest. So I'm just gonna rub everything off and give it a good clean.
Wow, I don't think I've ever seen anybody wash with a sponge before on vegetables.
It's a good way to get the dirt off. for like something like this.
Smart.
I love that you have like a veggie specific sponge.
Of course. I'm the only person who would have a veggie
That's
specific
adorable.
sponge. If you want to
Okay.
like really get your veggies clean, you can also soak them in vinegar and water overnight. That's one other way to do it. Or they do sell veggie cleaners. But from what I've read online, good old-fashioned water usually does the job. And like I said, since the skins are going in, you just want to make sure that everything is rinsed accordingly.
For anyone wondering why I'm not washing, I've already pre-washed most of these because my sink
Sure.
is behind me. I swear, I don't want to be eating dirt either. Although these are fortunately organic, but still do not want to be, don't want that floating around in the broth. Yeah, that wouldn't.
Okay, so I'm just gonna like bring this back over and then we're gonna chop. So I'll be right back.
Gorgeous.
Awesome. And this is great because, you know, I feel like so many folks in the winter want like a bone broth, but, and, you know, it's one way to easily reduce your meat consumption is to swap it out for a completely boneless broth. And it's got loads of vitamins and nutrients. This is great.
So you can just put everything on a cutting board or leave it in your colander and move over as we chop. But basically, one of the other great parts about this recipe, chopping skills are not my forte. You can chop these as roughly as you want because at the end you're draining the scraps. So it does not need to be in any perfect or biteable size. It's just more that you want to cut them so that the nutrients can kind of leach out of something like a beet or an onion.
Perfect, because I am not a trained chef.
And Carleigh, like bone broth, obviously the meat version has so many health benefits. So this plant-based option, does it offer the same nutrients, if not more?
So I would argue that this boneless broth is 10 times healthier than any bone broth. All studies I've seen on eating animal protein points to it accelerating aging, possibly being linked to cancer. I mean, the reason I went plant-based originally, my dad's a stage 2 colon cancer survivor. And in 2015, the World Health Organization announced that red meat and processed meat were now considered class 2 and class 1 carcinogens, which is up there with cigarette smoke and asbestos. So that definitely scared me and my immediate family. And we all transitioned to a plant-based diet. I mean, with that, just felt so much healthier. But to be sipping on something derived from kind of animal protein all day is not something I would ever advise anyone to do. I think somebody put it like drinking bone broth is like drinking milk to get your calcium. Like it's just, there's other ways to get the minerals. And when you look at the diversity of beautiful plants that we're putting into this broth in comparison to a bone broth, I think there's no question which is going to be more beneficial and tastier. Really, like plants provide all the flavor that we want in our food. So that's my opinion, anyways.
Thank you, and they're beautiful to look at.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it is pretty cool when you look at, I'm always in kind of awe of the colors that appear naturally in nature, like the purple of this onion and everything. And it really, we're attracted to it, right? We're very attracted to the beautiful colors of plants. And I think the reason is because we're supposed to eat many of them in abundance. So this is a great way to do it.
I agree.
And so Carleigh, I've got like this weird thing, part of the onion, like the stem, just throw it in there, right? Just
throw it in. So you guys, after you chop, you can start throwing it into whichever pot you're cooking this in.
And what do we do with the garlic?
Garlic, you want 6 cloves, but you can also throw the skin in as well. So you don't need to like peel them completely. The cloves, you can just throw them in. You'll notice that they'll peel themselves within the broth over time.
Okay.
I love that noise.
The chopping, it's so therapeutic.
Oh yeah, it is. And please, if anyone has any questions, use the Q&A feature. Sorry, Carleigh.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the same thing. I hope everyone's having a good time, and if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature.
Oh, the garlic smells so good. Oh.
You can smell it from over here.
Yeah. If only like Zoom had a feature so that you could smell like smell-o-vision. That'd be perfect.
The future, it will happen.
The future. The kale, I'm kind of just ripping it with my hands. Is that fine? And throwing it in the pot?
Exactly. You
Okay.
can massage it a bit. It will kind of like break down easier. But the big thing here is if you have the time, I would suggest simmering this for over 2 hours. So it really doesn't matter how these go into the pot because they're going to be really broken down by the time those 2 hours are up, as well as the spice is really aromatic. If you're creating any type of normal soup, I would normally suggest starting with garlic and onion and sauteing that and then adding the spices before the water to get kind of that the flavor built. And also you'll notice a great fragrance. But for this, since we're making a broth and going to be simmering it for such a long amount of time, it really doesn't matter. But that's one way to do it as well.
Cool. All right, and I've got some lemon. Are you using lemon? I don't see it.
Yes. I've got
okay.
it.
Just like cut it in half, quarter it. How do I?
So I believe we have 2 slices of lemon. So you can just use 2 slices. You can use more if you want, but it might just be a little tangy if you do. So just like a normal slice of lemon, cut it in half and then put 2 slices in there.
I'll save the rest for some water or tea later.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
I love lemon. I probably drink 2 lemons a day. Joe, I mean, I've read about your inspiring 21-day journey. Can you please tell everyone that's unfamiliar about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Love to share info about Meeting Halfway. So as you mentioned, it's our 21-day journey guiding folks to eating less meat. It includes some really awesome resources and tools there. So when you sign up at meetinghalfway.us, although all of you who've joined us today are automatically enrolled, and you'll be receiving your first email if you haven't already very soon. It'll include your meat reduction starter kit, that's 21 days worth of recipes, a meal planner, some easy swaps. For example, if you're into baking, some easy non-dairy or egg swaps. What else is in there? A whole bunch of health and environmental and animal welfare information. And then of course, throughout the 21 days, we're going to continue sending you a whole bunch of recipes, some exclusive discounts from our corporate partners, and all sorts of resources, fun quizzes, just some really great fun stuff in there over 21 days to, help guide you on this journey to eating less meat. It's really critical to transforming the food system so that it's better for people, the planet, animals, and help us move away from cruel factory farming. So I'm excited for you all to join us on that journey as you've enrolled in today. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, of course. Carleigh, for the ginger, I've got kind of 2 options here. I've got minced, and then I've got some ginger root. Which one do you recommend?
I do the minced because it's more of a whole food than the powder, but either will work. And about 1 tablespoon will replace a thumb of ginger, so you're good to go. Like I said, you can put just about any vegetables in this. The other thing is I wanted to note, like when I say any vegetable, I could list ones I wouldn't suggest more than I would list ones that can go in here. So ones I would avoid would be water-based, like a cucumber. I would not put in a broth because it's lacks flavor and it's really going to get mushy and maybe make the broth mushy as well. So anything like that I'd avoid, but any scraps of just about any vegetable or leafy green will be great to save for this.
And we have a question for you, Carleigh, from Lisa. She says, I always peel my carrots with a veggie peeler. Should I not be doing that?
I do the same often if I'm making something like a salad, but you don't actually have to peel your carrots. You can give them a good wash, and often I just will, especially as a shortcut if I don't feel like peeling them. But it's completely fine to peel them with a peeler as well. For this recipe, I don't bother because again, its skins are probably the most nutrient dense part, so we'll throw them in there. But if you're worried about like pesticides, etc., on a daily basis, you can definitely just peel them with a veggie peeler.
Thank you.
I'm a bit of a speed chopper, but I can show everyone what mine looks like in here. Sorry, Carleigh,
Oh gosh,
we kept asking you
beautiful.
questions. Thanks. Yeah, it does look really, all the colors.
OMG, that looks gorgeous.
And it smells good too. I'm excited to get this
I'm
simmering.
almost here too.
Hey, Carleigh, we have an anonymous question. What can be substituted for kale?
Kale, I would do like a chard probably. You could even do spinach, although it's going to get pretty wilted, but any kind of like harder green can be substituted. I made this last week. We did a run through of this and I just didn't add kale and it was still completely delicious. We're adding kale mostly for the nutrients. It's not a critical part of the flavor. So you can either omit or add something like chard, bok choy would be great. Even Brussels sprouts, I think would be really good. So any kind of harder green, bitter green like that will work.
Great, thank you.
Now I'm looking, look at how beautiful that is.
Lovely.
Nice.
Love the colors. Hey, Joe, we have a question.
Yeah.
What kind of pot are you using? Is that the cast iron?
It is enamel cast iron, and I believe Carleigh's using the same. That's a very, I won't say the brand because they didn't sponsor this, so I won't say the brand. If they want to, they can email me. But yeah, it's just an enamel cast iron. That's what I'm using.
Mine's the same.
Of course.
They're handy. I realized we put 8 to 10 liters of water, and unless people are in Canada, we realized that we use a different measurement system. So whatever size your pot is, I've done this with every single size pot in the moon. Just fill it so it's a couple inches down, but it will work anyway. Like the ingredients will leach into any amount of water basically. So I would just fill it. I wouldn't measure it out if it were me anyways.
So what, just leave like an inch or two at the top?
Exactly, just leave so it doesn't boil over basically.
Okay, yeah, for those of us who don't know the metric system.
Yeah.
So we're gonna move over to the sink now. It's getting heavy. So.
Yeah, these cast iron pots, like they're a workout.
Yeah.
I feel like you could like use them as like dumbbells. They're great.
I'm just gonna add water. If you can use filtered water, that would be good too.
Filtered water. Carleigh, how long does this soup store for? Like how long does it keep fresh in your refrigerator?
Okay, so 5 days in the fridge, could go more, always smell. And then in the freezer, probably up to 6 months. I'll talk about storing after because I have some options that I want to show.
Okay,
I'm just gonna pull that up.
And that was 1 teaspoon of turmeric, correct? Apologies. I actually, unlike all of you, don't probably have the recipe open.
Yes, I believe it is 1 teaspoon of turmeric.
Excellent.
But we can add that after we add the water.
Oh, all right. Too late.
Doesn't matter, really.
And I do have my salt here as well whenever we're ready for that.
Splendid.
Okay, so you see I've just left a couple inches. That'll be good. So I'm going to bring it back, and I'm not going to show you guys me trying to lift this. Well, you'll see me at the end here.
If your gym is closed by you because of COVID restrictions or something,
another use for boneless.
Pick up your soup.
Pick up a cast iron.
The uses for this are endless. That's right.
And you mentioned saving scraps in advance for the broth, that you could save them in the fridge. Can you freeze them as well?
Yeah, I freeze them. So I would suggest freezing them. If you have a Ziploc bag, you can just reuse it. If you have a reusable Ziploc like I do, you can use that. And then this is probably a good enough time to talk about how to store your broth. Mm-hmm. So we'd love to hang out with you for 3 hours, but I mean, I don't know if we can make that happen. So this is going to be an hour long today, but I would suggest simmering your broth. You can do it from any length of time, from 2 hours to 4 to 5 to 6 hours. And then you just want to make sure it's cool. Drain the vegetable scraps out of it, so it's just the broth left. Mm-hmm. And then you can compost those, but you've gotten really good use out of them. And then you want to package up your broth. So make sure that it is at least room temperature before you want to put that in your freezer. I use these huge mason jars here. And a hard lesson I learned a couple of years ago when I made this is I filled it up to the top. put the lid on, put them in the freezer, probably 6 bottles of these, and they exploded all over our freezer. So you want to leave at least a couple of inches at the top because it will expand and it has the potential to break if it does that. But if you let it cool and you just leave a few inches, you're completely safe. You can also store in a reusable Tupperware containers, another amazing option. And like we said before, about 5 to 6 days in the fridge should be completely fine, and in the freezer up to 6 months.
Oh, wow. That's a very long time.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a great food to meal prep.
Yeah. So I'm just turning the heat up. We're going to bring this to a boil. It will take a little bit to boil because it's so much liquid. And we can add the spices at this point now. So.
And Carleigh, I have a question for you. Do you add the spices? Well, you're adding the spices before you put the flame on, correct?
Yeah,
or do you...
I put the flame on first, but you should probably.
Oh, you do? I just didn't know what the proper.
Difference.
Oh, good to know.
When you're cooking like a curry or a normal soup that you're pureeing vegetables and you're wanting a really rich flavor, what I always do is saute garlic and onion, and then I'll add the spice before I add any liquid or anything else and mix that. And that's the best way to get a lot of flavor into your soups. But in this case, it really doesn't matter because it's simmering for so long when we add them. And I couldn't find fresh bay leaves at the store. We're sold out of a lot of things in Canada right now because in Ontario, we're actually in lockdown. So I have dried bay leaves. So there's a substitution I made today.
I was gonna say, I actually couldn't find bay leaves either. I have parsley and basil, but I could use them to dry, but would those work?
Both will be amazing. Both will be amazing. Add them. Yeah.
I'm gonna grab some then. Let's do it. I wasn't even prepared for that, but I'm eating this and I want it to be good.
And we have an anonymous question. Since Joe mentioned salt, I am on a low sodium diet. Does Carleigh have suggestions for salt substitutes or spices that allow you to lower the amount of salt you use?
Yes. One moment, I'm actually just finding my salt. So you can add any amount of salt to this. It will still taste delicious. The big thing about being on a low sodium diet is for you probably aren't eating a lot of salt in your diet to begin with. And our salt is kind of like our sweet taste buds. The more sweet things we eat, the more sweet things we want, the less sweet things taste and the sweeter we need to go. Same with salt. The more salt you eat, the saltier you want things, the more salt we want to eat. So for you, I would definitely bring back the salt a bit and it will still taste amazing. There's so many vegetables in here that give a lot of flavor. Like Joe's doing, you could add some more spices. Garlic powder might be a good one to add, parsley, basil, just to bring up the flavor components. But I don't think you'll have an issue, especially if you've been leading a lower sodium diet. The broth tastes amazing on its own. And at any time, guys, throughout this, if you've simmered this for an hour and you taste it and you feel like the sodium is a bit low or you want to add some more turmeric, by all means, you can adjust the flavoring throughout.
Thank
Great.
you.
This is like so easy. It's like DIY broth.
I know.
Yeah, no, it's so easy.
Oh, it looks so cool. It's kind of orangey from the turmeric. I can't bring it over because I'm on my computer, unfortunately, and the pot is hot, but I can assure you it looks good. Yeah.
We have a question from Julie. In addition to using as a bone broth to drink, what about a base for other soup or other dishes?
It's amazing for a base for other soups. We add it every time we're making soup. The great thing about this is it's so flavorful. You can even add a cup of it to a soup and another broth, and it will enhance the flavor of it. A lot of people in the plant-based community don't cook with oil. So this is personally what I'll often use as a starter of my dishes in place of oil to saute vegetables or make any sort of rice dish. I was roasting Brussels sprouts the other night And I actually said to my fiance, we need this in a spritz bottle because like I'll drizzle some on for flavoring rather than even adding salt or anything. And so it would be great if you had like a spritz bottle to use it like that, but it can go on so many different things.
They do sell those, like the empty like oil sprays that you could probably just use to fill this up, although I don't know if it's too like watery for it, but and maybe just keep it in the fridge. I don't know, just a thought.
That's smart.
I've heard these sell sprays on Amazon as well that you can purchase and like fill your own stuff. So the broth in that would be incredible in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And are there any recipes that pair well with this broth? And I think you just sort of answered that. Or a little bit.
Yeah.
Are there
anything that's a broth-based recipe, like I have a vegan chicken noodle soup on my blog if anybody wants a recipe to go off of, and anything that has like a broth as the base, it will be amazing. You can tweak it a bit. So like for the broth in the vegan chicken noodle soup, I would add maybe a teaspoon of poultry seasoning to give it maybe a bit of a chicken flavor. But yeah, any kind of soups that start with kind of like a brothy, liquidy base, this would be fabulous in.
Thank you.
I've been like super into chickpea noodle soup.
Yes, I love chickpea noodle soup.
It's so good, and chickpeas are such a great replacement for chicken. Really, just any kind of meat, quite frankly. I use chickpeas for like chickpea tuna, or here I am saying recipes that I'm not going to be able to share information about, but simple Google search and I'm sure you can find it. Or you can email, actually you can email Eat Less Meat at worldanimalprotection.us and I will actually be able to respond to you there with some good recipes. But chickpea noodle, chickpea tuna, like chickpeas are a great replacement, an easy swap. And just like lentils are another one, right? For ground beef, loaded with iron and protein as well. So many easy ways to reduce your meat consumption and just swap in some legumes and it's great.
Oh yeah. And can we add mushrooms to this?
Yeah, of course. Mushrooms are amazing for you. They're like a softer vegetable, as we know, so they might disintegrate, get like kind of soggy. So you would definitely want to not eat them after, but they could add definitely a richness to the broth and even more nutrients.
Thank you.
Nice.
And we have another anonymous question. Are we meant to use this broth in place of veggie cubes for soups or with them?
I would not add if you're using this broth exclusively in a soup, I would not add a bouillon cube just because it's going to probably be too salty. Bouillon cubes tend to be quite salty, so I usually use half if I'm using one. But if you, because I would salt this so that you enjoy it. So if you add salt and taste it and you like the taste of it, I don't think you're going to need a bouillon cube in addition to this in any kind of soup recipe.
Thank you.
Great tip. And so this broth is going to be like, I'm sure, purplish or some form of orangish red from the beet and whatnot. Let's say I'm using it for like a chickpea noodle, right? Which is more of like a clearer broth.
Exactly.
So should I like water it down? What's the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah, like it is a bit of a purpley broth. So if you can get like over that, you could use this exclusively in something like a chickpea noodle soup. But if you're wanting to get kind of like that chicken noodle soup look, chickpea noodle soup, if you're wanting to get a chickpea noodle soup look, then I would suggest adding a couple of cups of another broth or even water and just adding a bit of salt, and this will flavor it well and you'll be good to go.
Excellent.
So what does it look like inside your pot? I want to see.
I can't show, but oh my goodness, look at that.
Oh.
We're taking a little while to boil, but that's okay.
Yum, yum.
Yeah, it looks
Hey,
great.
Joe, we have an anonymous question for you. Joe,
Yeah.
I know we should be reducing meat, but I thought chicken was good for you. Am I wrong?
Great question. So let's start with just the welfare, right? Because we're an animal welfare organization, and chickens are among the most abused animals on the planet. Obviously, they're smaller, so it requires more of them. to process for meat than say another animal. Chicken farming is also terribly unsustainable from nitrates from manure runoff. Also, modern chicken is raised to grow so quickly that it's incredibly inhumane. They often will become immobilized under their own feet and crush their own feet. It's really cruel. So trying to eat less chicken is really important. In terms of health and the health benefits, chicken, for one, is often riddled with things like salmonella and other fecal matter. In fact, there was a USDA report that found high levels of fecal matter in chicken meat. And it's also, chicken nowadays isn't the same chicken that they were eating about 50 to 75 years ago. These are broiler chickens that are bred to grow extremely fast, as I mentioned. Often they will become immobilized under their feet. And they also are higher in fat content now. You'll see that white ribbing often in chicken that you'll buy at the store. That's typically from factory farm chicken. And that's higher in fat. So that's actually not that healthy for you. So be much better off just eating some more chickpeas and reducing it. And by eating more chickpeas and other chicken alternatives, we could move to higher welfare practices where chickens are treated well and there's slower growing breeds that we used to use. But again, we have to reduce that demand in order to do that. So for the betterment of everybody, I think it's better to just eat more chickpeas instead of chicken.
Thank you, Joe.
Absolutely.
I think it's better. Oh, sorry.
Tag, you're it. You speak.
I was just going to say, I think it's worth noting that as a society, we've become really focused on protein. And I'm sure it's kind of promoted by the meat and dairy industries over the years. We've become hyper focused on feeling like we need to center our plates around this meat. And actually, the research shows that even as a vegan or a vegetarian, we get 70% more protein than the daily recommended intake. So that's just as a vegan and vegetarian, and not counting our protein. And doctors like Michael Greger say, as long as you're eating enough calories in a day for your body to sustain itself, you'll by default get enough protein, especially if you're focusing on whole foods. Some amazing sources are lentils, beans, chickpeas, as we talked about, tofu. So it's really, really important to just look at simple swaps that you can make in your diet already. Like he said, swapping the chicken for chickpeas is like one really easy way to do it. And you're still going to get protein, you're going to get fiber, which 90% of us are fiber deficient, which we should probably be more concerned about.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I never even thought of that. And we have another question, an anonymous question. When making broth, I've used a wooden spoon to press the cooked veggies in a strainer to press every drop of liquid from the veggies. Is this unnecessary?
No, I love that. I think that's so smart. I've never done that. I might take that tip. And I think using a wooden spoon is a smart idea to do it. And I think it probably gets all the juices out and maybe even an enhanced flavor. So I'd say continue doing it and you'll probably see me doing it now.
Good to the last
next
drop.
video.
See how we're doing here.
Joe, I see that, World Animal Protection mentions superbug often. Could you please explain a little bit on what a superbug is and how global meat consumption is making antibiotics useless?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So factory farming, let's first start there. And it kind of started and was created as a way to meet the increasing demand for cheap meat, quite frankly. And to do that, we've now packed lots of animals into these windowless sheds. They're often in extreme confinement and they're treated as, quite frankly, mere cogs in a machine. So now we have all of these animals, right, in these sheds. And what do we all do? We excrete manure and it becomes filthy, right? And so it becomes a hotbed and a breeding ground for viruses and bacteria. And so in the US, about 70 to 80% of all antibiotic use is given to livestock. And so, these animals are pumped now with antibiotics just to pretty much keep them alive and sustained on these factory farms. So that the end result can feed us. And so, through that, these viruses and bacteria become resistant to antibiotics. And so that's where the term superbug comes from. And it's really crucial that, of course, it's really crucial that we, stop overusing antibiotics in the livestock industry, as it's, primarily where it's coming from. A lot of folks will think that, when they're prescribed an antibiotic from the doctor, that's the problem. But in actuality, the vast majority of it is from the livestock and agricultural industry.
Wow. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have another
smelling great.
question. What vegetable is the one it cannot miss on your diet for Carleigh?
Sorry, which vegetable is what?
What vegetable is the one I cannot miss? What vegetable can't you miss in your diet? Okay.
I got it. I'm sorry. It's
Sorry,
actually,
I read that so poorly.
You'll hear the term superfood thrown around a lot, and the truth is there's a lot of superfoods, a lot of amazing vegetables for us. Kale's one of them. Blueberries are amazing for you. Turmeric is great. All of these are great, but the most important thing is eating a wide range of vegetables. That's what's really going to help move the needle on your health. It's not going to be one food. So if you don't like one of these superfoods, you don't like kale, you don't have to eat kale. Eat another leafy green. And it's also important to be looking at ways you can integrate vegetables and grains and all of these things from these kind of different plant-based food groups. So just making sure you're getting leafy greens every day, making sure you are eating some kind of berry, pick your favorite, making sure that you're eating whole grains if you're not gluten intolerant, making sure you're eating beans. You don't have to love black beans to be plant-based. You could be a lentil person. So it's more so about making sure that you're getting a large diversity of your plants in your diet to keep that gut health in check and to make sure that you're getting a full balanced repertoire of nutrients in your diet.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's taking so long for this to boil because I'm using a hot plate today rather than my stove. But if yours is boiling, you're just going to put it down to a low simmer, and then you're going to pop the lid on and you're going to let that simmer for minimum 1 to 2 hours. It should be looking pretty cool right now. After about an hour, I would give it a taste and adjust your seasonings as needed. But the cooking portion, guys, is almost done. It was really easy and so fun, such a pleasure. In my kitchen, I don't know about yours, but it smells amazing in here.
It does. Yeah, sorry, Amanda Grace.
I know, I'm just over here, smelling it kind of. We have a question from Genevieve. Do you have a technique to salvage vegetables to eat them?
I don't personally, so I actually just moved in October, and before we didn't have a space for any sort of garden, but we've got a beautiful garden bed here now that I will be gardening in the summertime. Unfortunately, in Canada as well, I'm not sure where you're from, we get a very short kind of growing season. So I don't have a green thumb yet, but it's something I'm definitely wanting to get into. So I wish I could be more helpful, but I'm actually not sure.
Thank you. There's one from Karina. I am a bodybuilding athlete and I'm trying to change my diet into vegan. I am using mostly texturized soy for my daily protein intake. Is it a good choice for everybody?
Soy is great. It's actually so much misconception about soy. It's not estrogenic at all. The latest studies show that it actually can reduce cases of breast cancer. Wow. So look up, you can put soy health and the real truth will reveal itself very quickly. Another great account who covers soy a lot is Plant Proof on Instagram. But yes, it's totally fine to eat daily. I mean, it's like anything, I wouldn't go completely overboard and be eating it for every single meal, but you're fine. I eat soy multiple times a week. It's also in everything. I mean, 70% of soy crops are fed to our livestock. So whether you're eating it directly or you're eating the animal, you're getting it anyways. So I wouldn't be super concerned about that. What I would look at is integrating some other sources of plant-based protein. So every single plant contains protein, so it does add up. But other great sources are legumes, even leafy greens can add up to protein. You can look into also, there's some great plant-based protein powders on the market. And I've heard a couple doctors talk about how plant-based protein powders are perfectly safe to use. So there's a few options. Would I be concerned? No. And it's certainly better than meat, in my opinion, for so many reasons.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Thank you. Joe, knowing that we will all benefit from meat reduction if the world reduced their meat consumption by 50%, what sort of changes could we expect to see, and would they be immediate in our environment and our health?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in terms of environmental, it'd absolutely be immediate. And that's because animal agriculture is one of the leading contributors to climate change and greenhouse gases. It's also a contributor to dead zones in our waterways. And so it helped in that regard. So as Carleigh just mentioned, livestock feed is a huge problem, and it's something World Animal Protection is working on. And so, working to ensure that, we have less of a livestock population so we can preserve habitat for actual wild animals. And, a lot of the destruction going on in the Amazon and down in Brazil is for soy. A lot of folks will think it's to actually raise the beef, the cattle for beef, but in actuality, it's mostly for the feed to raise the beef. So that's a huge problem. And so, that's one of the immediate things we'll see. In terms of your health, you'll absolutely feel better. You'll feel, I know when I eat more plant-based foods, my skin glows and I feel like I have more energy, and my stomach feels great, and it's great in that regard. And then for animals, as I feel like I could talk about this forever, but we could really create a shift away from factory farming and greatly improve farmed animals' lives. So it's critical. And I just want to jump back to what Carleigh had mentioned before about soy. And folks have been eating soy in parts of Asia for centuries. It's plant-based eating isn't anything new. Tofu, soy, nothing new there. That plant-based protein is not a new source by any means. And folks have been eating it for centuries and have had really positive health benefits from it. And we've seen lower cancer rates throughout parts of Asia because of it. And now with the popularity of the Western diet that's meat heavy, we're actually seeing cancer rates in parts of Asia increasing. And so that's really problematic. And we're also seeing a rise in factory farming in parts of Asia. Like in China, we're seeing these mega pig farms that are like skyscrapers essentially loaded with pigs to try to meet demand there. And it's a real problem, not just here in the US, where we do have the highest consumption of meat out of any other large country, but all around the world as well. So it's critical for us here at home, but also abroad to do our part and eat less meat.
Eat more plant-based.
Easy and delicious.
And we have another anonymous question. It says, really enjoyed this class. Yay, thank you. Where can I find out more information about reducing my meat intake and more delicious recipes? Well, Joe's 21-day meeting halfway journey, and also Carleigh's Instagram.
Two great sources.
Great sources.
Absolutely. Yeah. Visiting meetinghalfway.us or just going to worldanimalprotection.us. You can find loads of information right on our homepage about meat reduction. And then I'll let Carleigh throw her plug in there for Plant U, because I know that I follow Plant U and it's got so many good recipes.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I post recipes almost daily on my Instagram account, which is just the handle Plant U. I also have a website at plantu.com with all sorts of goodness. So we can definitely help you out there. No problem.
And I'm so sad. Oh, wait, we have another question. Yay. It says, anonymous question, will I be able to watch this again later? Yes, you will. Everyone will be sent a link to their email. Everyone that signed up and donated will be sent a link. Promise. Another anonymous question. Will you have more cooking classes? I hope so. Please let us know if you enjoyed this. I mean, we would love to do this again.
Absolutely.
Any more questions?
We're going to be sending around a survey after this. So would love everyone's feedback, and hopefully, hopefully we'll do another one. This smells so good. I'm excited to eat it. And I hope all of you at home would join us again for this.
I want to thank you guys so much again for joining us and participating in the first ever World Animal Protection US Meeting Halfway Kitchen. If you guys enjoyed this, again, please be sure to let us know, and also let us know what recipe you'd like to see featured next. At World Animal Protection, we move the world to protect animals and end animal suffering. And without support from people like you, our life-saving work on behalf of animals is not possible. In 2019, 80 cents for every dollar raised went directly into our program work, like Meeting Halfway. If you're able, please consider donating to us today at www.worldanimalprotection.us. And the best way to support us would be to sign up as a monthly donor. And to all you animal supporters out there, keep being the voice of the voiceless. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.